The photograph wasn't supposed to exist. It was a gray Thursday morning, the kind that smelled like burnt toast and disappointment. Samantha had already left for work, leaving behind the faint echo of her perfume, amber and lilac, hanging in the air like a ghost that refused to leave. I was tidying up the kitchen, pretending the quiet didn't bother me, when I noticed a spiral notebook left open beside her half-finished coffee. I almost didn't touch it. She was private about her things, especially lately. But curiosity can be cruel, especially when it whispers instead of shouts. I reached for the notebook. It was heavier than I expected, thick with pages and pressed memories. When I opened it, something slid out and fluttered to the floor. Photo booth strip. 4 frames, printed on glossy paper, a little smudged at the corners. Frame 1. Samantha smiling, the kind of smile I hadn't seen in months. Frame 2. A man's arm draped around her shoulders. Frame 3. They were laughing, faces close, eyes locked. Frame 4. They were kissing. Felt like falling through ice. My breath hitched. My hands went numb. My heartbeat was a hammer trapped in my chest, pounding against ribs that suddenly felt too small. For a long time I just stared. My mind tried to build excuses faster than my heart could break them down. Maybe it was old. Maybe it wasn't what it looked like. Maybe. But she was wearing her green winter coat. The one I bought her for Christmas last year. The one she wore just a few weeks ago to her office's holiday dinner. That was when denial shattered. I sank onto the stool, the photo trembling in my grip. My throat ached with something thick and unspeakable. She had smiled for him. She had kissed him. And I was here, cleaning the kitchen, living the life she'd already abandoned in her mind. Then I flipped the strip over. On the back, written in her neat looping handwriting, were 4 words. "With you I breathe." The words carved themselves into me. That night when she came home, I couldn't look at her the same. Tried. God knows I tried. I told myself I'd wait for proof. That one photograph wasn't enough to destroy a marriage. But the lie curdled on my tongue before I even spoke it. She walked in humming softly, her cheeks flushed from the cold. She kissed me on the cheek, told me she was exhausted, that work had been hell. I nodded, pretending not to see the faint shimmer of gloss on her lips, or the way her eyes flicked toward her phone the moment it buzzed. Later, she crawled into bed beside me, warm and familiar. She draped her arm across my chest like she always did. But all I could think was how that same hand had traced another man's jaw, how her lips had whispered "I love you" into someone else's ear. I didn't sleep. I watched her instead, her steady breathing, the rise and fall of her chest, the faint flutter of her lashes. Even the rhythm of her sleep sounded dishonest. The next morning, I told her I had errands to run. When she left for work, I followed. I told myself it wasn't spying, it was truth-seeking. It was survival. Her car wound through downtown, eventually pulling into a side street near a small cafe. I parked half a block away and waited, my pulse thudding so loudly it felt like a clock ticking down to something inevitable. Then I saw him. Tall, clean-cut, maybe mid-40s, salt and pepper hair. The kind of man who carried himself like he owned every room he entered. He stood when he saw her, and the way she smiled at him. God, it was the smile I thought she'd forgotten how to give. She touched his hand when she sat down. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. The intimacy of the gesture made my stomach twist. They stayed for nearly an hour. She laughed, he leaned in close. I caught only fragments, her tilting her head back in delight, his hand brushing hers across the table. And then they kissed goodbye. Right there, in broad daylight, like the world around them didn't exist. I felt something inside me crack. Not explode, just fracture like porcelain under pressure. I drove to the nearest park and sat there for hours. I don't remember crying. I don't remember thinking. Just sitting. The silence inside my head was so loud it hurt. That night when she came home, she looked at me and smiled like nothing had changed. She asked what I wanted for dinner. She laughed at a joke on TV. She kissed me goodnight. And I let her. Because I needed one more night to figure out who the hell I was going to be when the truth finally left my lips. The following day, I searched for the man online. His name was Ethan Hale. His LinkedIn said he was an architect, married with 1 child. I scrolled through his posts until I found a photo. Him and a woman tagged as Rebecca Hale, smiling together in front of a house she'd designed. She looked elegant, kind. The sort of woman who ironed her clothes and believed in second chances. I wondered if she knew. Did she lie awake at night like I did, pretending not to notice her husband's distance? Did she smell his cologne and know it wasn't for her? That thought lingered for days, haunting me worse than the affair itself. Because maybe she was just like me, blindsided, desperate, waiting for a truth she already sensed. So I did something reckless. I reached out. I found her business email through her interior design firm. My hands trembled as I typed. "Hi Rebecca. My name is Lena. Think we should talk. It's about Ethan and Samantha." I stared at the message for an hour before hitting send. Then I waited. Each minute felt like a held breath that wouldn't release. When her reply finally came, it was short. "Friday, 7 p.m. Relia Wine Bar. Don't be late." I read the message 3 times. She didn't ask who I was. She didn't ask what I meant. She already knew. Aurelia Wine Bar sat tucked between 2 galleries, its warm amber lights spilling out onto the cobblestone street like spilled honey. I arrived 10 minutes early, heart hammering hard enough to bruise my ribs. My reflection in the window looked calm, but my hands were trembling under the table. When Rebecca walked in, time seemed to slow. She was tall, elegant, wrapped in a soft cream coat that looked expensive but understated. Her posture was composed, but her eyes, those gave her away. They were searching, guarded, wounded in ways that mirrored my own. She approached quietly, every step deliberate. "Lena." "Yes," I said, standing. "Thank you for meeting me." She studied me for a long moment before sitting down. "You said it's about Ethan and Samantha." Her voice was level, but there was steel beneath it. I reached into my bag and slid the photo strip across the table. "This is them." Rebecca didn't touch it at first. She just stared. Then, slowly, she picked it up, her fingers trembling. Her breath hitched. She turned the photo over, saw the words written on the back, and laughed. Not with humor but disbelief. "Of course," she whispered. "He said he was working late that weekend. I even made him dinner." Silence hung between us like smoke. The weight of it pressed down on both of us until it became unbearable. "I didn't know how else to tell you," I said softly. "But you deserved to know." Rebecca looked up at me, eyes glossy but hard. "And what about you? What do you plan to do now that you know?" I swallowed. "That's the part one haven't figured out." She signaled the waiter and ordered a bottle of red wine. When it arrived, she poured 2 glasses, full to the brim, and raised hers slightly. "To truth," she said, voice trembling. I clinked my glass against hers. "And to the pain it brings." The first sip burned, not because of the alcohol, but because of everything it meant. For the next hour we talked. Really talked. Rebecca told me how Ethan had grown distant, how he'd started sleeping on the far edge of the bed, claiming long hours at the firm. How she'd ignored the signs because she wanted to believe love could survive routine lies. I told her about Samantha's laughter that wasn't for me anymore, about the way she'd started humming unfamiliar songs while she cooked, how she'd changed her passcode and smiled too easily when I asked why. Our stories overlapped like 2 halves of the same broken truth. When Rebecca laughed suddenly, I flinched, until I realized it wasn't a happy sound. "You know what's pathetic? I thought we were happy. I thought I was enough." Her words cut deep because they were mine too. "You are," I said quietly. "You were just married to someone who didn't know what enough looked like." Her eyes shimmered. "That's generous of you." "It's not generosity," I said. "It's recognition." After a while, the wine softened the edges of our pain. We began to talk about other things. Our work, our hobbies, our lives before the people who had betrayed us. Rebecca used to paint. She stopped after Ethan called it a cute distraction. I used to write poetry. Samantha said it made me too emotional. We laughed again, this time genuinely. The kind of laugh that shakes loose grief's grip for just a moment. When the waiter offered dessert, Rebecca leaned forward. "Do you think they'd hate knowing we're here together talking about them?" A smile tugged at my lips. "I hope it ruins their appetites." Her laughter this time was soft, real, like wind through glass. We ordered another bottle. By the time the second was half empty, she reached across the table and took my hand. "I thought meeting you would destroy me," she said. "But it's strange, it feels like breathing again." I squeezed her hand gently. "I know exactly what you mean." We left the bar close to midnight. The streets glowed under the streetlights, slick from a light drizzle that had just passed. She walked beside me, quiet, thoughtful. The city's hum filled the space between our footsteps. At one point she said, "Do you ever wonder how they justified it? How they told themselves it was okay to hurt us?" "All the time," I said. "I think they convinced themselves they were missing something. Passion, excitement, freedom. But all they really missed was honesty." Rebecca nodded slowly. "Maybe that's why they needed each other. They saw in each other the thrill of pretending." We stopped outside her car. For a moment neither of us spoke. The air felt heavy, charged with all the things we'd said and the things we hadn't. Then Rebecca smiled faintly. "You said you didn't know what you'd do next. Do you know now?" Exhaled. "I think I just want to stop letting them write our story. Then maybe we start a new one." She leaned in and kissed my cheek. Soft, steady, not romantic, just real. "Thank you, maybe. Or an understanding. Call me," she said, getting into her car. "If you ever want to make them face what they've done." 2 days later I did. We planned everything. That evening, I told Samantha I was meeting an old friend for dinner. She smiled, relieved even, as if my social life freed her to live her double one. Rebecca and I met at the same restaurant where Samantha and Ethan always went, their little hideaway spot. We booked the table right beside their usual one. At precisely 7:30 they arrived. Samantha wore the same green coat from the photograph. Ethan's hand rested at her waist. They looked comfortable, careless, untouchable. Until we stood up. I saw Samantha freeze, her body going rigid before she even turned. Her eyes widened when she saw me, then Rebecca. The color drained from her face. Rebecca set the photo strip gently on their table. "Thought you might want to keep this," she said. "Since you seem to enjoy making memories." Ethan's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Samantha's lip quivered. "Lena." "No," I said quietly. "Don't explain. You've already said everything you needed to." Rebecca folded her arms. "You two deserve each other. Every piece of this mess." We stood there for a moment, watching them crumble under the weight of being seen. Then I turned to Rebecca. "Dinner?" "Absolutely." We walked out side by side, leaving them behind in their silence. Weeks later, after the dust settled, Samantha moved out. No screaming. No begging. Just a note on the counter that said, "I'm sorry for everything." I burned it. Rebecca and I kept in touch. Not out of revenge. That phase had passed. But out of something quieter, cleaner. Understanding. We met sometimes for coffee or walks in the park. We never talked about Ethan or Samantha anymore. One evening she said, "You know, that night at the bar, I thought it would be the worst of my life. But it wasn't." Smiled. "It was the start of getting our lives back." She nodded. "They can keep their lies. We have something better." "What's that?" I asked. She smiled softly. "Freedom." And for the first time since I found that photograph, I finally felt it. A breath that belonged entirely to me.